This is Gemara Metziah, Daf Ayin, and we pick it up on the bottom of Samach Tes Amid Beis. We are 2 lines from the wide lines, and we ended off differentiating between renting money and renting items. We said that when it comes to renting an item, there's going to be obviously more an allowance, number one. And number two, we said that you're even going to be allowed to give more money for a different item. That if I rent a field from you, the case was Basara Kurin Lashana, 10 kur of wheat for a year, then you give me alva, I can then give you 12 kur per wheat, 12 kur of wheat per year. You're allowed to give more in a different venture based on a alva that was had. So we then ended off with a case of Sfina and a case of Chanos. Case of Chanos, painting pictures, a case of Sfina, making a part of the boat. So says the Gemara, 2 lines from the wide lines, Sfinta, when it comes to renting a boat, Amar Rav teaches Rav Agra Uparga. You have to pay for the rental and you have to pay for the damages. Amar Rav Kanav Ravasi the Rav, Iagra lay Parga, Ipagra lay Agra. They asked, I don't understand. If you're paying for the rent, then why are you paying for the damages? And if you're paying for the damages, then you shouldn't be allowed to pay to rent. Shasik Rav. Amar Rav Sheishes, my time was Shasik Rav. Why was Rav quiet? Lo Shmi Alei Ha Titani, did Rav not know the following brisa that taught Afal Bisha Amru, even though they said Ein Mekablin Soin Barzel Mi Yisrael, even though the Rabbanan taught we do not accept Soin Barzel properties, items from Yisrael to invest and only receive their profits. Aval Mekablin Soin Barzel Min Anochrim, another extension of the allowance of ribis to goyim, which is the allowance to take items, invest them for profits. However, even though be'etzim it's mutter, Havla Amru, teach Chazal, Hasam bar lechaver of Amr loyri paras chasuy alai b'shleishim dinar. If one assessed a cow and rented it to his friend and said, the one paying, the renter said to the owner, I am acquiring your cow for 30 dinar value, meaning if I don't return the item to you, I'm going to pay 30 dinar for the value of this cow. And I'm going to give you 1 selah per month. So I'm renting your cow for $1 a month. I don't pay you back. I give you $30. Mutter. Why? The reason why it's mutter is because he didn't assume the value of the cow as a monetary obligation. He rather assessed its value and is paying a separate rental fee. Says the Gemara, 1 second. So he didn't assume it. What do you mean? He said that excuse me, Asuy alai b'shleishin dinar. Amar Rav Sheishes, Lay asa dami michayim. What does it mean? It means he didn't say such while the cow was alive. Ella la'achar misa. That he's only going to pay for it if the event the animal dies. Then he'll reimburse the owner the value that he assessed that it was at the original moment. And therefore, the Gemara is differentiating and answering up for Rav. This is different than our case of Soin Barzel properties. Because in the case of Soin Barzel properties, the issue was that you're always returning. There's a guarantee. And the truth is, that is a critical word. That any time there's a guarantee that you're for sure going to get back all the cash that you put in, that's when right away you run into an issue. Whereas in our case, it is not so. And Amar Apapa, Paskins Rapapa on the last line of Samach Tesam and Beis, Hilchas Sfina, Agro Pagra. The halacha is that when it comes to Sfina, you could collect both the rental and the damages. As we turn over to Nun Ayin Amar Alpha, the Nagu B'nei Kofra, and as much as that is the Psak halacha, but says the Gemara, the local custom of the Bali Sfina, what they do is agra b'shas meshicha and pagra b'shas shavira. They're allowed to take both, but the way they formulate it and the way that in actuality they allow it to play out is they take the agra, the rental, when the boat is given over to the other party, and they take the pagra, they take the damage at the time, or if the time I should say, the item broke. Says the Gemara to Haga, Talia Milsa. I don't understand what that means. Who cares what they do? We do psak halacha. What does it bother me what the Bali Sfina, the boat owners, do? Says the Gemara, no, Mishun Masnita Tanya Min Haga. The reason that they did such is because there's a brisa that says they're allowed to do such, and therefore, Masnita Tanya, as Rashi in the first line says, the mutter. And therefore, why the brisa we just said that as long as it was not a sa'adam mechayim lachar misa, when it comes to a boat, the breaking of the boat is similar to achar misa. And that's the reason why it would be allowed. Omar Ravanan, continues the Gemara 4 lines down, Ayin Amar Aleph, teaches Ravanan Amar Shmuel, Moi shall yisaimim, muter lahalvasan beribis. A unique leniency teaches Ravanan in the name of Shmuel. The money of Yisaimim you can lend with ribbis. Amarli Rav Nachman. What? Mishum de Yasminin usfinu luisura. Because they're Yisaimim, we're feeding them something which is aser. Yasmi, says the Gemara, Ta'achli delav didu. That when an Yasaim is getting something that's not theirs, les little basar shavkayu, then they're going to go straight to the grave. So Rav Nachman, quite violently, we could say, disagrees with Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel. Amar lei, Rav Nachman continues and says, what was the precise story that you, Rav Anan, wanted to be makel? Amar lei responds 10 lines down, Ahu duda tibnei mar ukva. There was a duda, a pot that belonged to the children of Mar Ukva, Davei Mar Shmuel, that Mar Shmuel was in charge of. Takal v'avlei, Shmuel would weigh it and lend out the pot. Takal v'shakalei, he would weigh it and take it back at the end of the rental. And he would charge them the difference in weight. As you use a copper real pot, it slowly wears away. So as Shmuel rented it out, he took wages, and when he took it back, he weighed it and took the difference in the item. Shakal agra v'shakal bachsa. So therefore, what comes out, says Rav Anan, that what was Shmuel doing? He was taking an agra, he was taking the fee, a rental for the item, and v'shakal bachsa, and he was taking the depreciation, the erosion of the pot. And this is where Rav Anan, in the name of Shmuel, taught that Yisaimim are allowed to lend beribis. Because we see that they're lending at an item and they're getting back more. Says Rav Anan, I don't understand. So Rav Anan continues. I don't understand. If you take a rental fee, you should not be allowed to take the payment for the diminishing. If you take the payment for diminishing, you should not be allowed to take the payment of the rental fee. That's ribis. From the fact that Shmuel allowed them to do it, teaches Rav Anan, must be that you're allowed to take ribis for Yisaimim. Amar lei, Rav Nachman responds, Kiha, if this was your raya, Kiha, if this was your raya, afilu b'dikinani nami shari. Then even if regular people, not Yisaimim, not regular, even other adults, would be nami shari lemevad, this would be allowed. Why would this be allowed? The reason why this is allowed was because the Yisaimim accepted upon themselves the loss of the deterioration of the copper of the Nechashes. The Kama Demakli Nechasha, because the Metziah teaches Rav Nachman, as copper is burnt, Batir Dameha, the value goes down. So it's true that Rav Shmuel, accepted payments for the depreciation of the pot, but there still is something more that the Yisayim themselves suffered, that the pot itself went down in value for the next time. And therefore, says the Gemara, wasn't ribis at all. So says the Gemara, raya number one, they collect with ribis, didn't work. So Amar Rabba Bar Shila, Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Rabba Rav Yosef Bar Chama, Amar Rav Sheishes, Moi shal Yisayimim, Mutal al Vaisam, Karov l'schar, V'rachoik lehefsid. So says the Gemara, we thought that we could lend them out with ribis. The Gemara refuted that. So rather it teaches the Gemara, you can make an arrangement which is very close to ribis, in which the profit, the revach, is karoiv, whereas the hefsid is going to be very lost and minimal. Tanu Rabbanan, continues the Gemara, 20 lines down. First one on line is V'rachik lehefsid. Karoiv lizchar v'rachik lehefsid. A non-yasam, a regular person, lends out in the mannerism. He makes his business venture that he will profit, and the losses is very minimal and not common. Rosh. Karev lehefsid v'rachik l'schar chassid. Karev lezev v'rachik mizeh lezeh zohi midas kol adam. That's the average person. So says the Gemara, a weighted business venture is the normal way of going about it, and then there are spectrums on both sides. Omar le Rabba le Rav Yosef, Hani Zuzi Diasmi. This money of Yisayimim, once we're on the topic, says Rabba to Rav Yosef, Eicha Avdina Mehu. How do we deal with it? Omar le Rav Yosef responds, Musina lu Beidina. We make a Bezdin, and Bezdin controls the estate. Vivina le Zuzi Zuzi. And we give the kids a zuz at a time. We give them their living expenses. Amr le, Rabbi says back, karna. But if you do that, there's going to be no money left. If they keep on taking out, the pot is going to deplete. Amr le, Rabbi Yosef said, Mar hechiav. What do you suggest, Rabbi? Amr le, Rabbi responded, but kina gavra de islay dava pricha. We look for a wealthy person who has pieces of gold. Naktina dava minei. We take the gold as a mashkin, and then we give him the money of the Yisayimim to invest. And we tell him it has to be an investment which the schar is much more common than the hefsid. Aval davar misuyam loy. But to do something as a definitive item, to take as a mashka in a davar misuyam, that you should not do. Meaning, rather take davo prichi, fragments of gold. Why? Delma pekadain ninu. Because the reason is, because we're worried that this wealthy person, the item that he gives as a bikadim might be a bikadim by him. V'asamari, and the owner will come and take it. Yav simanim v'shakulei, and take it away. And therefore, we should only take as a mashkain davo brichi, fragments of gold. Amar Rav Ashi, asks Rav Ashi, lines from the bottom, Tenachi mishtach gavra disle dava bricha. Okay, you find a guy that has gold fragments, wonderful. Eloi mishtach gavra disle dava bricha. Then what are you going to do? Nechle zuzi diasmi. We're going to use up all the money of the Yisayimim. Elom Rav Ashi. So rather suggest Rav Ashi chazina, we see gavra di mushvi nechsei umehemin. We look for a person with stable properties, a trustworthy guy. V'shama dina daraisa. He follows the rules of the Torah. V'loi bekabel shamta derabanan. He was never put in chayrim. V'avinu lanialei v'beidina. And we give it to him in Bezdin, and we stipulate that you should invest the money of the Yisayimim karov l'schar and rachaik le'efsid. And just parenthetically, this lemaisa is really what we do out of Yom Hazeh. Is often, Rachmana litzlan, there are different collections for different tragedies. And the money that they collect for the kids, for the family, etc., what they do is, mamish, what we just said, they invest it in a mannerism of karav l'schar and rachik lehefsid, so that it's not mekalya karna. And so that the money is around for the family. We continue with the Mishnah on Ayin Amid Beis. Ein mekablin son barzel me Yisrael. Like Gemara we learned yesterday, and we'll get more in depth today. You cannot accept son barzel from a yim. Neishu ribis, it's ribis. Aval mekablin son barzel min ha'akum. V'lovin mehanu malvin oisam beribis. From a guy you can lend and borrow with ribis. V'chein beger toishav, and so to a ger toishav. Malvi Yisrael ma'isav shal akum midas akum avaloi midas Yisrael. A yid can lend a guy's money to another yid if the guy agrees, meaning I could be working for a guy lending ribis al das the guy, but not al das the Yisrael. So really two parts of this Mishnah, beginning with Soin Barzel, what is not allowed by a yid, and then moving on to, Soin Barzel, which is allowed by a guy, and other forms of ribis which are allowed. So let's begin. Before we dive into the Gemara, let's just look at Rashi for a moment. What does it mean, Soin Barzel? Says Rashi, it's a type of business venture, kol achayis anachasim al hamikabel. The managing partner accepts all potential issues. And this is what we would call a guarantee. Guarantee is a treif word, and therefore it is forbidden. Says the Gemara L'meimra. From the beginning of the Mishnah, it seems to say the Reshusa de Mekabel Kaim, that in a case of accepting a Soin Barzel arrangement, it sounds like that it stands in the Rishos of the Mekabel, the managing partner. The Reminu asks the Gemara, Mekabel Soin Barzel min anochrim v'ladois beturim min abachayra. If you accept such an arrangement from a guy, the babies that are born are pater from the din of Bachar. Why? Because it's of a guy. But 1 second, if it's considered in the possession, Bershos, of the Mekabel, then the Yid is the Mekabel. So there should be a Chayiv in Bechayra. Amar Abaya, like Kasha. Hadam Mekabeli Unsa Vizula, Hadam Mekabeli Unsa Vizula. Depends how much the managing partner accepted upon himself. In our case, it was everything. In the case of the guy, it was not. Amalei Rava, Ida Kabale Mara Unsa Vizula. If the owner accepted the Ines, any eventual accidents and the depreciation, Zain Barzel Karisla, what's the whole Zain Barzel like we said? It's a guarantee, but if the owner accepts upon himself the Ines and the Zula, it's no guarantee, number one. Void on a tani safe, the safe says Amal Kablin Zain Barzel Minakum. So then, like Bididei should differentiate. If you didn't accept upon yourself Ines and the depreciation. So Arava disagrees with Abaya's assessment of a difference is whether you accepted unsa v'zula. Ella amai Rava. So rather, Rava comes along and Rava explains, they're both talking about where the owner did not accept unsa v'zula. But Gabe B'chayra is Hainu Tam. So what's going on in the case of B'char? The Vlad is pure min B'chayra. Kivan the Loyav Zuzi Asi Nachri Tafis Al Behema. Because what Lamaisa could happen? The guy could come and say, "You're not paying up. I'm taking back my animal." V'ilay Mishagach La Lebehema Tafis Lu Levladais. And if the guy can't find the original animal, he's going to take the Vladais. Therefore, it's considered it's considered that the guy has some level of ownership. He has a way to grab hold of this Vlad. That because is at some level the guy has an involvement, it's pater from B'chayra. And that's the reason. But it's not a kasha on our case. And it still could be considered Bershusa de Mekabel. This is just a din in Bachar that you'd be pater. Continues the Gemara. And we're just going to begin now with the din of ribis by a guy. And we quote a pasuk, Marbe Hainai ben Eshech v'tarbis. One who's Marbe Hain, he increases his wealth via Neshech and Tarbis, ribis. L'chaynein dalim yikbitzenu. He collects it, who favors the dalim, the poor, that the money that one gets be'isr illegally, he's going to lose, and it's going to go to someone else, which of course is a big chizik to, number one, just keep the halachas of ribbis, because you're not going to gain even, says the Torah. My l'chayni dalim, says the Gemara, amarav kon shavar malka. For example, shavar malka, who gives the money to Goyim. Amarav Nachman, Amar Lehuna, Loi Nitzcha Ella, Ta'afilu Ribis, Ta'akum. This is a chiddush that it's even referred to Ribis of Akum, that one is not going to ever benefit from it. Says the Gemara, 1 second, Esi Ravaler Rav Nachman, Lenachri Tashich. But says the Torah, you could yes be Tashich. My Tashich. Lav Tishaych. Does it not mean you could take ribbons from a guy? Says Gemara, Loi Tashich. Means you could pay ribbons to a guy. Loi Sagi, Delav Hachi. Says the Gemara, I don't understand. Why do you have to pay guy ribbons? Is it a proactive, positive halacha to pay a guy ribbons? Says the Gemara, yes, that you can't give ribbons to a yid, but you can yes give to a guy. Says the Gemara, love or love. So at a moment the Gemara is standing, is you cannot take ribbons from a guy, you can only give ribbons to a guy. We'll pick it up from here, B'siyata Dishmaya.